Andrew Jackson. Who was this great man? He was the 7th President of the United States of America. He founded the Democratic Party. He brought down the National Bank. He empowered the common man. But what was his greatest accomplishment? To examine this, we must look back into the years prior to modern American society as we know it.
Whatever happened to predictability? The milkman, the paper boy, evening TV. Did I get delivered here? Somebody tell me, please. This whole world's confusing me. Clouds as mean as you've ever seen. Ain't a bird who knows you're true. Then a little voice inside you whispers, kid, don't sell your dreams so soon. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a heart, a hand to hold on to. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a face of somebody who needs you. Everywhere you look, when you're lost out there and you're all alone, life is waiting to carry you home. Everywhere you look, everywhere you
The little Andrew Jackson was born in a small Waxhaw settlement among other Scottish-Irish settlements. The boy was named after his deceased father, who had died just 3 weeks before he was born due to a logging accident.
You shall be named Andrew after your father, who came to America to make a better life for his family and save us from the poor Scots-Irish.
The South Carolina native led a relatively simple life in his early childhood. He lived with his mother and 2 older brothers, Hugh and Robert Jackson. He received a satisfactory education at the local school. On his free time, he enjoyed partaking in leisure sporting activities, such as wrestling and racing the local schoolboys.
Okay, come on, I don't think you can do it.
His mother had high hopes of him becoming a preacher for the Presbyterian ministry. However, young Jackson's propensity for pranks, cursing, and fighting quickly dashed those hopes.
Andrew Jackson began to display his brash personality, which makes him memorable and unique from our many presidents at a very young age. His personality derived from many different factors in his early life, such as his brother's interest in joining the military and his lack of a father. Such factors taught him to look after himself and act very tersely when provoked.
Yo man, I dare you to do it. Come on man, fire. Fire.
Why are you guys doing that?
I will literally kill you. Andrew Jackson would never fit in as a preacher or a minister of God, but his personality would make him an impressive leader. His leadership skills and bravery were truly tested as he grew older into his teen years and the call of duty became stronger.
Great men such as George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson chose to secede from Britain. After years of horrendous abuse such as taxes, they managed to whip the colonies into rebellion. After much debate, they signed a mysteriously unknown document that supposedly started the revolution. Jackson was too young to serve in the army, but he did serve his country as a courier. During the time he was captured, his brother Robert died of smallpox, and his other brother, Hugh, died of a heat stroke. To top it all off, Jackson's mother died while serving as a nurse. These events hardened Jackson into a man of action. Jackson's life continued along the military path. During the Creek War, Jackson headed a militia which defeated the Red Stick Creeks. This was due to the fact that Jackson's men were armed with muskets, while the Creeks countered with red sticks. Ineffective. After showing his prowess as a leader in the Creek War, Jackson became a general in the War of 1812 for the United States of America. Jackson's legend was cemented during the War of 1812 when he fought off the British at New Orleans. What he didn't know was that the war had ended 2 weeks before the Battle for New Orleans even began at the Treaty of Ghent. After his success as a general in the War of 1812, Jackson became a hero to the American people. His fame rivaled that of George Washington, and the people thought he could do no wrong. After being made a major general in 1814, Jackson was given command of the southern frontier. When tasked with subduing the Seminole Indians, Jackson might have gone slightly overboard.
So you want me to capture Florida?
No, just subdue those Indians.
So you want me to take over South America?
No, just subdue those Indians.
So you want me to take over the world?
No, just subdue those Indians.
Okay.
Jackson did indeed capture Florida. The American people loved him for it. But Jackson made many more political enemies who thought he overstepped his boundaries by executing 2 British nationals during his military expedition. Jackson started his career in politics in Tennessee, where he was relatively unopposed. He was elected a U.S. representative in 1796 and spent time as a U.S. Senator and State Supreme Court Justice as well. He had his eyes set, however, on the highest office in the land. The stage was set for the election of 1824. Four men duked it out for the office of the presidency. While Jackson secured the highest number of both electoral and popular votes, he lost the presidency to Adams due to an arrangement known as the corrupt bargain. Since no man had a full majority in the Electoral College, the election was tossed to the House of Representatives. Henry Clay, the great compromiser, as Speaker of the House, arranged for Adams to win the presidency in exchange for an appointment as Secretary of State. Jackson got his revenge in 1828 when he won the election by a landslide. Furthermore, Jackson changed politics in America forever by establishing the Democratic Party and essentially establishing the two-party system. The enemies of the new party tried to lampoon its symbol, the jackass. One of the other important developments of the 1828 election was the increased prevalence of dirty politics. Wait, no, wrong type of dirty. Anyways, this election was full of dirt digging, mudslinging, defamation, slander, and all sorts of low-down, yellow-bellied scumbaggery. No one was safe from the barrage of dirt. Yes, it was rough. Not even the candidates' wives were safe from the political firing squad. Nonetheless, Jackson's everyman image won him the presidency. It was his goal throughout the rest of his life to bring down elitism and bring up the common man. In 1832, Jackson issued a proclamation that disputed a state's right to nullify a federal law. It was written in response to an ordinance issued by a South Carolina convention that declared the Tariff Acts of 1828 and 1832 unauthorized by the Constitution of the United States of America. Calhoun, Jackson's vice president, even wrote a doctrine supporting South Carolina's supposed right to do so. Congress then passed the Force Act that authorized the use of military force against any state that resisted the Tariff Acts. In 1830, Andrew Jackson launched a largely biased campaign against Native Americans. It was recently discovered that a tribe of Native Americans in Georgia were settled on a reserve of gold. In order to gain access to this gold, and express his long-festered hatred for Native Americans, he enacted the Indian Removal Act to remove the Indians in the southeastern United States to the area of the U.S. now known as Oklahoma. He forced thousands of natives on a forced march, known as the Trail of Tears, that resulted in the deaths of many of the natives who initially started on the trail. This was one of the darker moments in Jackson's presidency and led to the widespread criticism of his actions. The Force Act, an entire nullification crisis, caused enough political strife that a split in the political parties began to appear again. The Whig Party was formed, and its policies were the antithesis of Jackson's.
Despite all the turmoil, Jackson's charisma, willpower, political savvy, and yes, his sheer beastness as well, vaulted him into yet another landslide victory in 1832. It was during this second term that Jackson reached one of his best or worst, depending upon who you ask, achievements, killing the Second National Bank.
While the National Bank did stabilize the American economy, everyman Jackson felt more than a little uncomfortable with the idea that an elite group of unelected fat cats were running the American economy. In 1832, he vetoed the bill to recharter the bank and put even more pressure until it strangled itself to death under his political might in 1836.
Jackson always fought on the side of the common people. Even through the fall of a bank, which destabilized the economy, Jackson thought it safer to kill the bank and end the power of a northeastern oligarchy and accept the consequences.
Yet this was not the only great achievement of Jackson's second term. In 1835, the president showed himself to be a true master of cane fu when he clobbered an assassin with his walking cane. The assassin, Richard Lawrence, was an aggrieved house painter who didn't like Old Hickory very much. To that end, he tried to shoot the president with not one, but two pistols. Unfortunately for Lawrence, his attempt at overkill was underwhelming when the 67-year-old president ignored both guns, which incidentally misfired, and charged the assailant at top hexagenarian speed. Lawrence felt the wrath of Old Hickory when he got a good dose of it right on the backside, and also the front side, and every other possible side.
Decades later, Smithsonian researchers test-fired both of the pistols in question. Each went off perfectly on the first try. Such is the power of presidential cane fu. Bullets are no match and the laws of nature itself don't apply.
Despite such abundance of awesomeness, Jackson's presidency had some dark clouds hanging over it. First off, he practically created the spoils system, in which public office would be given to whichever man could eat the largest amount of spoiled food. Ye old fear factor.
The spoils system actually worked by giving public offices to party cronies, rather than those who might be able to capably fit the position. Nonetheless, the result was fairly similar. Public servants simply weren't the most qualified for their positions. One of the most dire consequences of Jackson's reign was the removal of Indian populations from their ancestral lands towards the west. Jackson went past even the Supreme Court, not that impressive considering that everybody back then wore enormous white wigs, and pushed thousands of Indians off lands that were rightfully theirs. Jackson always believed that he stood for the common man. The only problem was that, in Jackson's view, the common man was white. Make no mistake, the removal of the Indians was a brutal and harsh act that could certainly be called genocide. As testament, the path that the Indians took was called the Trail of Tears, in memory of their sorrow and suffering.
Jackson, however, saw no wrong here. In truth, in his opinion, his real failures were of a different sort. In the end, Jackson died much as he had lived, which meant not peacefully in his bed. Throughout his life, Jackson had been a constant and consummate duelist. On one such occasion, rather than racing to have the first shot fired, Jackson allowed his opponent to shoot first. In haste, a lethal shot turned into one that missed Jackson's heart by mere inches. After being shot in the chest, Jackson calmly raised his pistol and blew his enemy away. Such was the nature of the man, and by his old age, he had more lead in him than a Chinese paint factory. He died of tuberculosis, dropsy, and heart failure. So fell Old Hickory.
Jackson was a colorful figure. He fought much, gambled much, and drank much. Yet he also did more to make the American political process inclusive to the common man than anyone before him. His career was plagued by controversy and conflict, but nonetheless, Jackson did indeed create what we would recognize as the modern political process.